Let's get into it. 1, 2, 3. Hello. Come on, computer. Sorry, everyone. I don't know what's going on there. It all got locked up. My apologies about that. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Did you do that to me, Mike?
I didn't do anything to you. I'm not doing anything at all to you whatsoever. I swear to you. On Mitch's
My apologies, everybody. I'm going to hand things over to Mike in a second. But welcome to My Whiskey Den, your favorite public access whiskey review show where craft whiskey is king. Tonight, we have David Levine on from Whiskey in My Wedding Ring, who is our newest addition to the Bar Cart Co-op. So thank you very much, David, for being with us this evening. We really appreciate you coming on. We're going to dig into your story in a minute. But before we go any further, Mike, do you want to tell everybody in the chat out there about the Bar Cart Co-op itself?
I would love to do that, Pat.
Thank you, sir.
All right. We are proud members of the Bar Cart Co-op, which is a collection of friends who create content for the whiskey and other distilled spirits public. Bar Cart YouTube and Facebook pages have information about upcoming and past special shows, which happen about every quarter. There are blind tastings, distiller panels, discussions of special collaborations, and the usage of unique grains. The Bar Cart Co-op is educational and fun episodes for your enjoyment. Distillers Talk, which is the oldest show in the group, is hosted by Alan Bishop and Christy Atkinson. It's a conversation with people from distilleries and distillery adjacent, getting into the weeds with their interviews. New episodes arrive at the end of the work week. There's also One Piece at a Time Distilling Institute if you don't think that Distillers Talk is nerdy enough. This is a show where Alan Bishop answers any questions about distilling and often puts them to the test. It can be individual grains, mash bills, equipment, and methodology. New episodes come out randomly, so subscribe. And then we have the classiest of the bunch, Bourbon Turntable, where they mix the love of music with the love of whiskey. Kevin and Drew have a conversation with musicians, writers, distillery folks, and common folks like us about music and whiskey. It releases every Wednesday on all your platforms, including YouTube. And then we have If You Have Ghosts, You Have Everything, which is a show about the spirits and paranormal among us, as well as the unexplained and the spiritual. Subscribe on Spotify to get all 3 seasons. And then we have, and I will let him describe it, the Whiskey Ring Podcast. David, please describe yourself.
Right, well, I'm about 5 no. So Whiskey Ring Podcast is, it's 100 plus episodes in. I'm still trying to figure out how to describe myself, but basically it's talking to people in the whiskey industry, whiskey adjacent, writers, distillers, everything in between, who I find interesting and want to talk to more about. Everything from the micro distiller down the street to Jack Daniels and everything in between. And ultimately, I want to kind of split the difference between people who know enough, like they're past the bourbon pursuit kind of level of knowledge, but sometimes we do get as nerdy as Alan does on Distillers Talker. So, I can throw in the ethyl carbamides and all those things too. So, Alan knows I'm on his back for that.
Everyone's a little bit nerdy here, so
yeah,
should be. Yeah.
Kevin, you keep your weird questions to yourself.
Let's see, where do I see myself in 5 years? Hopefully London or Italy.
Oh, not bad choices. Bad choices. I like those.
Yeah.
Okay, I could branch off into where in Italy, but I think we'll wait for that for later. That's a whole different discussion. So, how did you? And I always kind of start this backwards with people. What made you or started you get excited about bourbon, or how about just any type of whiskey? Because a lot of times it could be Scotch. It kind of breaks down the barrier for people. What was kind of the drink that kind of first set you down the path to being excited about whiskey and kind of pursuing it to where you have today?
Honestly, it was during grad school. I was going to grad school here in New York, and about 2 weeks in, I was told by one of my friends that you needed to be able to drink to get through grad school. I wasn't much of one at that point. I liked wine, didn't really drink beer, hadn't touched spirits really. And so the friends took me down to this place called the Whiskey Ward and got me a flight of Bullet 10-year. This was in like 2014. So Bullet 10-year, Woodford Reserve, and for the life of me, I can't remember what that third one was. I've been trying for a week. And then because the Whiskey Ward just closed last month. So I've been trying for weeks to figure out what the third one was. I don't know. But yeah, so I started there. I really started with bourbon. Evan Williams Black Label was the first one. I just put my bourbon in the fridge because I liked it cold.
You like it the way you like it at certain points. Jack Daniel's number 7 was really mine at one point, as sadly it is to say that, but that was what kind of
start there.
Yeah, exactly. And then I'm like, then I had Four Roses single barrel, and I was like, ooh, there's a difference.
I think there's only one type of person that doesn't start at that level. Like no one starts at barrel proof. Anyone who says that started at barrel proof, they're just lying. The only people who are weird enough are the people who start by drinking really peaty scotches. And I know a few of them, and I was just like, for some reason, I imagine them as like 10-year-olds drinking that and enjoying it, and boggles my mind. Now, I like peat now, but back then, like Johnny Walker Black was too peaty for me. So yeah, that's how I started. And then a couple years later, I got into. Sorry, Peter. A couple years later, I started writing down my notes because I wanted to try so many things, and I wanted to keep track of all of them because I couldn't remember what I liked and what I didn't like because I was trying so many. And then I ended up putting them online. Like a year after that, I started the podcast and just kind of followed wherever it led me.
So what made you choose the name of the podcast?
So there is actually whiskey in my wedding ring. It's, I don't know if you can see it too well. There's whiskey
Hold on
stave.
a second here. We can do.
Yep. There's whiskey stave in there.
Very nice.
Done by a guy down in Kentucky, actually. So, but it does contain scotch. So take that for what you will. And
we like scotch here too. It's
okay.
Kentuckians are nothing if not industrious. Like
Fair.
we're not too
Fair.
proud not to not make money.
But yeah, so when we got married, when we chose the ring, I hadn't thought of it as a marketing thing. And then when I was trying to figure out a name, like what am I going to call myself for all that? I don't know. What is the char level on your wedding ring? Okay, I know the answer to that. So it is a char 3.
nice.
But it's
Classic.
used cooperage because it's Scotch.
But still,
So it's Macallan 18. So
that's awesome that you got
Nice.
the pick. That's
yeah,
very
you
cool.
had a pretty good selection.
Very cool.
I've been throwing curveballs a little bit, but that's excellent that they actually had that in there. Some of them you just see are like, oh, it's a bourbon barrel ring. I'm like, who knows from where? Do you really know where it is? That's fantastic. They broke it
We
down.
did our shopping. We wanted to make sure that like we knew what was in that ring. So
Okay, so I have a question about your website, and this is maybe jumping ahead, and we'll bounce around too. We don't exactly go chronologically or intelligently, but I've seen where you'll invite a producer or somebody to dialogue if they don't like one of your reviews. Can you talk about any instances of it, and if there were any of them that you changed your opinion or refused to?
I could do both. So yeah, in general, when I'm asking people for more information, when I really don't like something, I'm trying to figure out like what direction are they going? Is it something that I can try, that I can hear from their mouths? I want to get to this flavor profile, this feeling when you taste the whiskey. And maybe I can retry it and think, all right, I can, see that, but maybe they need another 2 years or 6 years, or, however many it is. And sometimes it's just like, you're not going to get there with this. This is just, sorry. And it helps me because I like to know the intention. For me, intention is a big part of reviewing. It's thinking about, for example, what's a good example here? So I have a bottle here of Glens Creek. They're one of my favorite micro distilleries in Kentucky. And they have this new line that they're calling the Unoaked series. It's basically a white whiskey or a white spirit. And the label, as I'm looking at it, has like the tree on it. It's corn whiskey. It has all this information, a ton of information on the label. So as a reviewer, I look at that and think, okay, this is what the producer is trying to tell me. And that can be as much as they want to tell me, or sometimes on these really scant labels, as little as you want to tell me. But at the end of the day, if I'm looking at it as a consumer, that's what I have to go off of. That's what I'm looking at in the store or on a website, is just what's on the bottle. And maybe what's on the website if I have a chance to order it from there. So I go by what is the producer telling me. And that's how I kind of weave in intent. So I have had a case where it never changes the score, but it does change the information that I include. So that way it keeps the score objective as it is, but it adds like, but this has promise that it can go up. Now I did have, it's only happened once, but I did have a distillery. I won't reveal which one it was, but it was here in New York that asked me to take a review down. It was not a favorable review. It basically said like, it was just one of those products that was offline. It was not going to get better. And I think it was because it was, small cask, over oaked. It's hard to work backwards from that. And I said, well, why do you want me to take it down? So if he had said like, look, we're working on it, we'd like another chance, I would have taken it down. I have no problem. I don't want to. Are we allowed to curse on here? I never.
Oh yeah, you're fine with that.
Yeah.
Okay. We're past 5 minutes, so we should.
You're free to speak. Yeah, you can speak freely.
So, I have no intention to shit on products or to shit on them. It's not fun for me. I don't enjoy doing it. But his answer was basically, well, it's a bad review out there. It doesn't look good for us. I was like, that's not enough reason to take it down. You want to tell me like, okay, can I try it again in a year? Fine. But just to take it down because we don't like it, then you shouldn't have put it on the market, or you shouldn't have let me have it. Like, especially if it's a bottle that you send me.
Oh, that's
you're
a whole
asking
different
for it to be reviewed.
Yeah.
That's a whole different thing.
Yeah.
Because that's
That's something I just pick up. That I'll take it down maybe if they didn't intend for it to be reviewed, kind of thing, which in itself is a statement.
I was like, this was more. I meant for you to just maybe give us feedback on, since you taste a lot of things. It wasn't meant for like the public, and maybe There is. It is weird how people take stances on what they think should happen. We haven't had too much of too much flack. There's been a few incidences, but nothing terrible. Or at least in our end, we weren't concerned with what the outcome was going to be, and we felt that way beforehand.
Yeah.
Knowing the way the product tasted and the way the individual had carried themselves in the past.
Mm-hmm. And look, I'll give you an example of a really good relationship I have where I can give that kind of feedback. And it's really important for like reputation and all that, is with Barrel. I've been fortunate. I've tried, I think, every one of their bourbons since batch 29, I want to say, maybe 28. Sometimes it's a sample, sometimes it's a full bottle. It's kind of scattershot as to what you get, but I get those. I get the gray label. I always want to say silver, gray label, gold, and a couple of them I liked, some I didn't like, and this was earlier in my writing, and I was worried that frankly, the flow of samples was going to stop because he put up a bad review. And a lot of people are afraid of this.
Mhm.
So I reached out to the PR guy that I was working with, and I said, look, I'm happy to talk to the barrel team, talk to Trip, Joe, whoever you want me to, throw my way about this. And he's like, no, I told them, if you want to put stuff out there, you got to be okay with bad reviews sometimes. And even the barrel that I reviewed, their batch 5 gray label from 2022, it was like cast strength at 97%. It was, or 97%, cast strength 97 proof. And like, I thought it was great. I rated it pretty highly for me. But I basically eviscerated the marketing strategy in the review. I said, great whiskey, but it's not $250. You have less information on this than you had on previous releases, and it's going against the trends here. And lo and behold, within the last year, we've seen not one, but 2 price lowering on both the gray and the gold labels. So, that's not taking credit for it, but it's just pointing out, like, sometimes you got to look at the bigger picture around something and say, even if this is a good product, it's not going to move.
And there's a lot of it that we'll talk about here where, and I'm not saying in that case, but some of the whiskeys you can tell are taking a price grab at things because it was there, and we understand you moving up because of costs, but when something almost doubles and quadruples, and in some cases it's the exact same thing that maybe 8 or 10 other people are releasing, then there's no real reason for that quadrupling when everyone else is still in this other realm other than just mystique. And that's sorry. That's part of my ranting. Sorry, I kind of went off my own there. I'll go back to my chair here.
You mean celebrities don't blend their own bourbon? I mean, come on. At least leave them.
That's a whole show I'd like to get into because that's just. I dislike the fact that it's just a revenue stream. I would love the fact if someone knew 2 bits or someone was came to you like, hey, they just want me to represent it. I tasted it. I liked it. Now I'm more than happy to do that. I'll listen to your story. But if it's just another way for you to make money off, goodbye, Mitch.
Every time you get on this subject, he leaves.
Well, he's associated with those people, so. Oh.
I mean, if you're going to take away Santa Claus, at least leave him the Easter Bunny. Like, give him some hope. Come on.
Yeah. But no, there's just some of that I can't. I'm just intrigued, and I feel like on all those, it's kind of too much of a blank slate, and here I'm doing it rather than what's going on with it. And then a lot of them, it's not that great, and that's kind of the scary thing. I think there was like a year or 2 ago, they did. There was like a football tasting of people who didn't actually like Bradshaw's whiskey was probably the best one out of the ones that were there that they tasted. I'm like, I'm like there's so much out there right now that I hope things would have changed, but I don't know. That's a celebrity money grab thing. We got to get off the subject.
Yeah.
I might take the show back. Sorry.
So, okay. So to continue on that line, and I'm just curious because you put it out there. Hey, you got a problem? Talk to me about it. Because a lot of them don't, or they will. Well, at least we've seen in the YouTube part, we've seen a producer start going after a friend of ours, and their whiskey sucked, Boone's. And it never got any better. And they doubled down on lying about it. So I don't have a problem shit talking them because they lied and they were jerks about it, and they never came back around. But have you had any of them that it just like either because you're offering to be for them to be honest and you to be honest and try again? Have you ever had where like you lost the relationship out of any of them?
Yeah. Biggest one, most public one, was Uncle Nearest. I had both Fawn. I had Fawn on with Clay Risen for like an introspective 6 years in. A couple months later, I had Victoria Edie Butler on to talk about blending and her history in relation to Nearest Green. And I was really taken by the story. I cared about the brands. I respected them for being entrepreneurial. And then I started getting product from them, and they sent me 4 things over time. The first one was a single barrel of the Tennessee whiskey, that was fine. But they sent me 3 rye products. And it was the 100 proof rye, the single barrel, and the uncut, unfiltered in reverse order. And it ended up costing me the relationship because I called them out for false labeling practices. And I wrote a whole article about this, came up back in February, I want to say.
Mm-hmm.
And it really was just saying, like, look, here are the pictures. I'm telling you how to read these labels. You can fool people with them, but even if it's not illegal, it's dishonest. But I said, like, in the article, I end it with saying, look, I respect what they're doing. I don't really get what they're doing with this line, but let's talk about it. And that was back in February. Haven't heard anything since.
We worked with, I don't want to say worked with, but there was a place in Door County that said that they never sourced their whiskey, but the labeling would say otherwise throughout the entire time frame. And I questioned that, and that was a big and I was like, no, but then why would you never change it if this were not the actual case of it? And it doesn't pass that way because they are. Though the TTB does make mistakes, they are kind of assholes. No offense if you work for them, but you guys are assholes. And good for you. It's part of your job. So
They should think to be assholes. They have to catch more mistakes.
it is amazing. That's a how many people really work for the TTB? And
right. It's a government agency, though. They are wrapped in paperwork and bureaucracy. And it's, yeah. I'm not defending it. I'm just saying, look, some things are also up to personal judgment when they do that stuff. And I deal with the FDA stuff for day job stuff, or not as much as I used to, but you would know. And I've seen this with people, TTB. They're just like, just submit it 3 times in a row. It'll get approved on the 3rd time. Well, it'd be the same thing with some of that stuff. You would know when you go to submit it. Oh, I want to make sure that so-and-so sees it because I know that they'll let it go. And the other person's going to be a stickler, on stuff that really doesn't matter. And it's a thing. So
I can back that up by saying, again, this referred to the Uncle Nearest article that I forget which of their products it was, but they had 6 TTB entries in a month's span of time. They were all exactly the same. And it got approved eventually. It was wrong and was deceptive, but it got approved. So, yeah, that's exactly what happens.
Yeah. There's a question from Morgan.
Yeah. So I would say not to my knowledge. I've seen them change marketing plans and how they I definitely see marketing plans. I'm going to think about that in the back of my head, but let's come back to that because I know there's got to be 1 or 2 that did do that. I'm just trying to think who it was.
So good. I'm actually gonna pour a little. What are you sipping on right now?
So right now I am sipping on shameless self-promotion, my first ever barrel pick. So Jack Daniel's rye, single barrel proof rye, and nice sweet 133.9 proof. I am an unabashed proof whore, so proud of it.
In general, most people do like things full proof or higher proof. There's a point where, unless it's really bad, it kind of fades itself out. I feel like once you get above like 55 or so, unless it kind of dulls how much you're going up. I have a hard time. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I have a hard time telling in that range, but I think that's more because you're not getting as much of the alcohol spike from some of the things at that point.
Yeah. I've gotten to a point where I don't taste the alcohol if it's under 100 proof. I just don't. But my proof hound thing does tend to stick more to American whiskey. So corn spirit, rye spirit, wheat spirit. Barley, I really enjoy the lower proof, or like capping it at maybe a 100, 110. So just something about American spirits. I like the higher proof.
Yeah. I did get to try that pick this weekend at Kevin's house. And he sent me home with sample, which I'm going to split with you two guys. How's that go there like that? But it's tried it, and then it was just like, wow, that's what the proof is. Because for someone who's a proof hoe like myself, because I do love that and I do like getting a punch. Oh man, it's not there, but boy is it sneaky. I mean, it's
Yep.
It drinks lower. I mean, it's not like that was my first time having the single barrel proof rye. I can't even find it around me, but I love single barrel proof. And I love that sometimes, I mean, it's a kick to the side of the face, and I love it. And it was just like, oh, okay. And then it was a little later, then it was just like, oh, that was a good pour. Because you can't hide 130, what was 133 and a half or something.
Yeah. 133.9. So
Yeah.
And I told you, we picked 3 barrels that day. So the sister barrel to this came out at 133.8. So almost identical. But this one is at 7.5 years. So December of 2016. It was barreled.
Very cool.
So, I mean, if the proof is what you're going after, I have this thing nearby, another group that I'm part of, Jews and Booze. Great name for a group. Fantastic. This is a single barrel Canadian whiskey, 22 years, 9 months, 171.2 proof.
Nice.
That's beautiful.
Like you're a shade and a half off from running a car off of this.
Yeah.
You're not a shade and a half off. Like, just FYI, like that will run a car.
Yeah.
And does it even remotely taste like that? Because we've had 1 or 2 light whiskeys like that were up in that ballpark, and maybe they tasted at what I say 25 points less than what they were. It was
This drink's closer to like
for about
120.
5 seconds they did. Yeah. It's like, oh, whoa.
It's like definitely closer to like 120. When I got to try it blind, I thought like 120, 125 maybe. It was hot, but definitely within control. And then pulled out the proof on that, and I could feel my esophagus just eroding. But it was worth it.
So is that a pick that's available outside of the group, or is it
The Jews and Booze one?
yes.
That one, no, that one was only 60 bottles. It was very recent. I think it was 60 bottles just because, like, when you're that high of a proof, there's been evaporation on that thing. So it was probably syrup when it came out of the barrel. Most of their picks go to the group pretty quickly, I would say. The biggest ones were, they used to do obviously Good Times when everyone was doing Good Times. They had some ones that were really good. They picked a rye with a chocolate finish that nowadays I would be like, oh, fucking hell. Like, no, please no. But it was fantastic. It was
we had 1 or 2 from them that were pretty decent as well too. I forget which finish it is. I think I probably still have 5 or 6 from that one time we stopped out there.
Yeah, there was I remember there was the chocolate peach, and that one took a little bit to come around when it did, but then it was just like, oh, okay. And then there's the ladies' man Courvoisier finish, which is another one that took a little bit to grow, and then once it did, it was like, all right, okay.
I see, brandy barrels that no one has ever made brandy out of these things. But
Yes,
somehow they've got it in a barrel.
Yeah.
I'd love to take some like real products and age it, like take a rye and put it in Kings County's chocolate bourbon or chocolate whiskey. That could be fun.
Yeah.
And it's actual chocolate whiskey. It's not.
Yeah, it might
whatever
give you a
those
neat
could put in there.
it'd give you a nice spice on it.
And I know that stuff is actually seen a barrel. So
Yeah.
that's something.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, so I got another question about your at least stuff I found interesting from your site was your
Right. You've
your
only got
ratings.
one more, so no, I'm just kidding. Sorry, I
All right,
like interrupting with jokes, so just keep talking.
No,
Over. It's
please
easier.
keep
You're totally in the right place. So because I found this very interesting the first time I saw it, and then and I went back and I was looking at it the other day. So my question is, how long or how often do you update this? And have you ever dropped one of them down, or where you're just like, normal Blanton's, it's now a 6,
Sure.
or and there's some of these too where like even looking at, so you had the drain pour, the Virginia cider cask, which at least everybody's palate's different. And I wouldn't agree with on that one, but have you ever gone back to that one ever?
Yes. So we'll start off with that one. Virginia. Well, I haven't gotten back to the cider cask, but I have had more recent stuff just in the past year from Virginia Distilling Company, and I was quite impressed by it. So for me, maybe it was just that one product that really was off palate for me. Sometimes it is an entire brand. Sorry, Balcones is just not for me. I will say, so the scale here, I've kept the numbers and the words, but in the past maybe year and a half, 2 years, I have dropped off the examples because I found two things. One, it does turn off some brands from sending product or from sharing because they're afraid that they're going to be put into the 3-2-1 category. So that's one thing. But the other part was that, kind of to your point with the Blantons, there was a point for me where Blantons would have gotten a 7 or OWA, a Booker's, and where like every GTS was a 9 or above. And as I got to taste more, like if you look at this list, everything above everything 5 and above, these are all, if not widely available, very widely known brands, bottles, all those stuff. So people would look at the scale and they would get an idea in their head of what they think about some of these brands, and then that would color their opinion of the reviews. So I ended up just dropping them and just keeping the numbers, and I kept 4 and above, and then at another inflection point I combined 1 through 3 and just said, look, if it's going to be here, I'm not going to give you an actual score. I'm just going to say it's in this category, and we can talk about it offline. And there have only been a couple that I've both posted and kept that are on that level. But I also just don't really find those reviews fun to write, to be honest.
Well, they're kind of cringy.
Yeah.
When you're doing them, it's not fun to try to find a high point. You know what I mean? There should be something there to look at and be like, okay, there's hope here. This could progress in a year or two. You might see it change. Yeah, there's been a couple. Well, there's been a couple we've had where it's like, I don't think so.
Yeah, I've even written that in the reviews. We're like, okay, this just needs, like right now it's a 4.5, maybe a 5, but give it a year or two. It'll keep getting better. I really reserve those bottom ones for things where I'm just like, this is not getting better. The only way this gets better is if I forget about it. So yeah, it was. And so I know Balcones is never going to come on the show. That's fine. I can live with that.
But do you like in the case of Balcones, do you ever go back and at least you personally try other releases from them?
Yeah,
because there's like 100.
Yeah, I haven't tried the full catalog. Let's put it that way. I've tried like most of the main ones. I've tried a couple of single routes, but mainly the like the rye, the single malt, the blue corn, brimstone. Brimstone I thought was actually interesting. I didn't particularly like it, but I thought it was a very interesting idea. The rye was my worst pour of 2022. It was, I didn't post it at the time because I was like, I don't know if I should. Then it got out that I said, then I was like, fuck it, I'll stand behind it. I said it. I wasn't going to be like, I didn't say it. I did say it. So, no, I do go back, and some of them will come back and in a couple of years and say, hey, we'd like you to try some new stuff. And that's when I find that most interesting, is that's a dialogue, and you start actually talking and you can find commonalities. Because I know there are brands that put out quality products, and maybe that's even balcones for people. I mean, for me, I really don't like the product, but I'm not saying that it's a bad product that's being made illegally in some shady part of Texas. Like, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying I don't like it. And I think that's a big thing to look at.
Preferences as watching our viewers, like, okay, that's how you shine on to people. It's like, I feel the same way about that. You know, it's like, okay, now we're a little bit closer. When you give a review, I can trust our palates, or at least I can trust your palate to know what you like.
I'll keep that in mind, Kevin. Thank you.
Kevin's just stirring it all up.
Yeah. He had a chip on his shoulder, did he?
Yes. He was about to.
What do you mean that's not a rumor?
Yeah. Yeah. It's not.
It's in the court records. I don't think it's a rumor anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a legal document that's been notarized.
Netflix documentary 2024.
Not neat. The new documentary.
Sorry, that
was so
things that
not
could
neat
be in that. That would be fantastic. Probably not what the industry wants, but I would love one of them. That would be great. Like a 30 for 30 of things that didn't go right.
We're fed so many stories from the whiskey industry writ large about people that never existed or creating new stories about them.
Mm-hmm.
We should have some of like, this guy. I mean, I'm not a fan of Andrew Jackson, but like, okay, you want to make a whiskey about duels? Throw him in there. Throw Hamilton in there. You know,
That's true.
Give it a shot.
I was at the
Glad
only
you got
reason
that.
the only reason I won't say anything or say too much, because I don't want to spoil in case this happens, and I hope it does. I was at a distillery, and they were talking about the fact that we're at a time where we're seeing things happen in the industry that, you know, that like we're talking about stuff that happened and people that were pioneers in the 50s and 60s, and they're no longer here. But now we're seeing some people that are a new type of pioneer and in regions or states or things like that. And their history does need to be taken down, at least at some point while they are still around, because you didn't get that from everybody else. You got folklore, and, you know, folklore goes a long way, but you know, marketing people get a hold of it, and then other things happen. And then next thing you know, they make up, you know, someone's place in history, or past. But there's a chance to take all this stuff down. And I thought, and I'll tell you after the show, you know, who it was. But I'm really hoping that they do that, because it is unique to be in a time right now where we are seeing, you know, new things in new areas coming up, and those are stories that, hey, we have a chance to get it right. You know, instead of having to rely on court records or unsealing documents to get full stories on things.
Exactly.
So, yeah, because I mean, history, you know, some people make it on their label. Some people repeat it enough that then it becomes fact, or at least people believe it to be fact. And some of that's playing out on bottles.
Blatantly embellish at the nearest side of that statement.
Yeah. Well, or I mean, like,
I was taught by this person, you spent a weekend with them. That's not the same. It's not the same.
Right. But I mean, even like simple ones, like there's people just always say, oh, well, Elijah Craig was the first distiller. Well, maybe not, you know, some evidence says maybe otherwise, but we don't know, so we just kind of rely on it, you know.
I'm making that's what I turned down. I was making a list of things for after the show that probably can't go on air. That I'll trade you some stories like that.
Okay.
So yes.
All right.
Like I
So
said, I still want people to come on the podcast, so I got to temper myself just a little bit.
Yeah. And again, it's fine. Marketing is fine, but it's especially very recently this year, you've seen what appears to be marketing people taking over when you could go by truth, and the truth is fine. There's nothing wrong with the truth.
In some
But
cases,
somebody-
the truth would have been fantastic and been
Yes.
a million times
Yes.
better statement
Yeah.
than what
Because now
fluffy, sparkly shit was blowing up people's
now
asses.
you have to make the marketing truth. And then some of that, anyway, it's very annoying. Okay, so I'll change subject here. So you strike me as a person who doesn't look at bottles or take pictures of a bottle on your crotch next to your large watch, or any of those other things. That you're an open it and savor it person.
I was waiting to see how that question was going to end because that could have gone very differently.
Okay.
So,
is that a
Raising
fair?
and work.
This is just based on what I've read, read of your stuff, whatever.
No,
Is that fair?
yes,
Okay,
for sure.
but is there anything that you are saving? Number one, or number two, is there anything that you save specifically for certain crowd or certain occasion?
So before I answer that, I actually do want to go back just briefly and say there was a Kevin. I'm so glad you remembered. So I do want to say there was a point in time where I did really go after things. Like I was active on secondary. A lot of us were, especially during COVID when we couldn't go to stores and actually look. So I definitely went down that route at a certain point, but no, never a crotch shot. Never. I could do some with watches. I do like watches, but I'm not pulling out a Patek Philippe. Best watch I have is a Burberry, and I'm very happy with that one. So I'll stay with that. Anyway, so I have gone and forgotten the question. My bad on that. Sorry.
Whether it's being a
yes,
collector
okay.
and
Right.
saving things. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's very rare that I find a bottle that I save. Before I turned 30, I had a couple of birth year bottles that I had that I was saving for my 30th birthday. I had one of them was a Glendronach from that year. It was like 23 years old or something, an old Crow Chessman piece. But for the most part, the only reason a bottle isn't open with me is because I have a version of it already open. That's really it. I firmly believe it's for sharing. If I find something that's really great, I want people to share it. I want to bring it to a meetup. If I find something that's really bad, I also want to bring it to a meetup to not just shit on the brand, which does happen sometimes. Daniel Weller, but but also to make sure it's not just me,
Oh, yeah. That's originally when I brought Mike and I was going to say Ben or Mitch on at one point, was because regionally you get subdued to different flavors. And I didn't want to be like, I'm shitting on this whiskey. Let me make sure I'm not the only one. Sounds bad, but I'm like, maybe you like something I don't, or maybe he doesn't, or I'm missing this minerality thing and no one else is getting it. I guess I wanted it a unanimous shitting on if that was the case. But, it was all one of those things where I didn't want stuff to fly past me and be like, here's my unanimous, this is the way it is. I'm like, I wanted other people yeah, it's not quite that bad. Or with anything with licorice in it, other people like it. They like it quite a bit. I'm not the greatest fan.
I love licorice, love black licorice, and a friend of mine who also has a podcast tells me it's because my soul is black and bitter. And which might be true.
It's not that. 'Cause I've got that. Still not a licorice guy.
Oh, fair enough. Okay. But I don't know. I like bitter flavors. I like a beer. I don't drink stouts or porters really. I like a really hoppy bitter as fuck IPA, like 60 IBUs and up.
Ooh.
And, yeah.
Pat might have a whiskey for you.
Oh God, no, that's just mean.
Do you still have some?
Of that one, yeah, I
Yes.
have like an ounce of it. I don't want to kill him.
I don't think so. I
Well-
think David would be up for it.
I'll
It's an
send you some
IPA
Are we,
whiskey.
pickle.
are we thinking of that the Yahara?
Yahara Bay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I have it downstairs in case of emergency.
In case someone breaks in the house.
Yeah, it's I promise. They did a hoppy thing, and I had it within the first like 2 months of them making it, and I was like, "Oh my God, I don't really like hops," but I was like, "I kind of like this." Okay, cool. I bought a bottle, and it must have been 6-8 months, whatever, later, and I poured out samples for people, and something had happened, and something happened in the process. The whiskey went bad. It was things turned to a. Do you remember like going through J.C. Penney's when you were younger and had the perfume section? And if you went through, you got all the like old lady smells, and it was. I used to go walk around. It was too overpowering for me, that section. I used to get the okay to walk around that shit. It was that whole thing. Just it would ask Mike. It was terrible. It coated your whole palate. It was. I feel this is bad. I don't want to do this to you. What did James? How many things did he use to cover his palate that night?
Oh, he tried hot sauce, pickle juice, everything else, and nothing worked.
Horseradish, mayonnaise.
Horseradish, yeah.
Anything he had in the fridge, he tried to cover it. It stuck
But-
with him.
But I think it's one of those things that not as punishment, but it's like, hey, you love really heavy IPA stuff.
But I don't know.
I'm willing to try it.
I mean, you can,
Yeah.
but I feel like I'm putting a warning label on it because I wouldn't normally.
I'm trying to think if I have anything that's like that. I don't think I do. I have things that you might try and be like, what the fuck did he send me?
I have a couple other ones like that
Yeah.
too, but I don't want to start that type of relationship.
Yeah.
And someone blinded me with Wicked Pickle whiskey. So,
Yeah, we had that.
yeah, I just like, you understand. I grew up in a like Reformed Jewish household, and like we weren't that religious, but we had deli all the time. I knew what a pickle tasted like. So, insert joke there. And I literally poured it into my Glencairn. And it was blind, and I smelled it. I'm sitting next to my wife, and my head just went. Like, I thought I was having a stroke. I looked over at her and I was like, "Can you smell this, please?" And she's like, "It smells like a pickle." And I was like, "Oh, thank God. Okay, no hospital." And like, it was just, ugh. It was so. The only worst thing was from the same person, this jackass. And he blinded me with Ramp vodka, which I should have known. I saw it was clear. I should have known. But
We had
So
that with was it that salty dog one? Not salty dog.
Yes.
Oh, there was it was some type of dog.
It was, yeah, there was a peanut butter and all these other
All
ones, but
sorts
it wasn't
of
just
cherry flavor.
Yeah.
It was a horrible night.
Yeah.
was it? Maybe it was dog flavored. Salty dog.
It could have been fairly close.
Something that came out of the dog.
Yeah.
So does your wife also drink whiskey?
Not at all.
Okay.
Not at all.
Does she
It's a
drink it
real
all?
problem.
Is it a
Occasionally.
problem or is it a blessing in disguise? Because
No, it's
you have
really
no
a problem.
competence.
No, it's really a problem. You know how many fewer bottles I would have if I had anyone in the household who, and it's only us, but anyone in the household who also drank with me. Like, we'd have room. It would be fantastic. We live in Queens. We have an apartment. Like, we don't have basements. We don't have the extra room that you can put all the liquor into and set up a studio. Like, no, it's just everywhere. And, so no, she doesn't.
We have one of our friend Matt in Texas who is very similar. Where it's like, hold on, I think that's in my kid's closet. I have a whole section hidden behind here.
And if this room is eventually going to be nursery, kids room. I'm in my home office right now, and reason I have a background on it is because it's just messy as hell. And right now it's the whiskey room. Right? There are shelves with old bottles. There's a closet that's just full, like I'm stocking up for doomsday. It's everywhere, and it got that way very quickly.
It jumps up, and there's like a year or two once you start like getting really excited. I think it's the first like 3 years, and then all of a sudden, and then at some point, if you're with someone, they'll question you about it. Like, nope, we need this, or I need this, and they're like, okay, do your thing, and then start looking at a couple shelves or a whole closet or a whole room that becomes alternate, and you're like, You question it, and then you go to Mitch's house, and you feel a lot better.
I was about to say, you're firing some shots right
I am. I was just taking.
They're not even across
there's
the
a whole
bow.
fucking wall.
Like, you're just right in
that little
the
thing.
center.
The thing behind Mitch goes for like 20 feet to the left, around the corner, and there's bottles everywhere. So I didn't feel so bad. I felt pretty good.
I remember buying the first. We had a bar card that I got from my grandparents that for about 6 months held all the whiskey that I had. Then we moved, and I said, okay, I want to get a bookshelf, like a 5-story bookshelf to put whiskey on. And I thought that's where it would stop. And that was 5 years ago. So, yeah, it hasn't gone well with that. And there are bottles that I have that honestly, I like I said, most of them are open. So I couldn't even, if I wanted to, send them to an auction site or whatever. So it's just sitting there. And the thing is, I don't drink enough in my regular day anymore to drink anything down safely. Like I max out at 2 drinks most of the time, and usually it's 1, to be honest, after sampling stuff. And it's just, I don't want tea afterwards. So it just sits there. And I've stopped buying for the most part.
That. Like before on the intake level of when kind of like I said, that excited point versus now where it kind of, when it slows down where you might, how to do that? Explain it to the one doctor. Yeah, I might have 6 drinks, but my drinks aren't drinks. We're talking like a quarter, like if we're going through a lot, I'm like, I still probably only had 1.5 or 2 ounces between everything we had here tonight. And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, I wouldn't walk straight if I had 6 ounces, if I had, like there have been nights where yes, but that's not, that's not the way everyday. Yeah, that's not the everyday. That's not, don't count that one in there. But I just found it odd not odd, but how much, I don't know if I got better at things or it's just how much less you need to do a tasting and get into things. I'll still go back later on, but before now, if I have a 2-ounce sample or something, if I finish that off in an evening, it's because I absolutely loved it. It's not like I was going into it and go, I don't know. I'm not sure how, like hemming and hawing on it or trying to determine the right thing. It's just become much less. Mitch or Mike, have you found that to be similar as well too through your whiskey experiences, or that maybe you don't drink as much as what you did in the past or day to day in the past when you were?
I'm not seeing a lot of agreement in their faces right now.
Well, I was waiting for it. Mitch has been too quiet. I want Mitch to answer.
Yeah, that's why
I haven't really changed my consumption too much. So honestly, this show has been the number one thing that upped my consumption because I really started drinking when I worked at the cooperage and I saw some folks lose some parts of body parts while working. So like, that's one of those things you're like, I'm not coming to work drunk. I'm not coming to work hungover. I'm not going to give myself that possibility of happening. So I didn't drink Monday through Friday for, I don't know, since I started drinking. Right. And then I came on this show. Now it's like, okay, so I drink on Mondays, but not Tuesday through Friday. Unless it was a really bad day, then I'll have like a beer with dinner. Unless it's really, like cold out, and then it's not a beer, it'll be a whiskey. But yeah, I mean, I used to want like a 5-sip pour. Now I want a 3-sip pour. because I still have just the worst digestive system on the face of the planet. So if it's just one of those things where it's like, hey, you know what really makes you feel better? High proof alcohol in large quantities is not something that, has ever come out of my mouth. So I've always had to kind of self-impose limits, and they haven't changed too much personally.
Yeah. I'm basically the same way. I don't drink every day, and I don't drink a lot Monday night like this when we have stuff, but I'm having water because I was in Kentucky and bourbon on the banks. And so I'm going to take the week off just because it makes sense. That's why I have the ones that I have, because I'm not finishing them. And so I do things when someone says, hey, will you come over for dinner or whatever? I'm going to bring 4 bottles with me, and they might be 4 that are 2/3 full, it could be a couple of short ones. I'm like, hey, one of you needs to finish this because you need to experience this one. And then I mark it off on the list. And I've got ones that I put aside specifically to take places because I want other people to try them because I've tried them. And I'm not going to pour them out. And I like cocktails, but I'm not going to make cocktails every night either. I just don't. I would like to, and I could, but I'm not going to go through all this in any short order of time unless I'm going to meet Elizabeth Shue on the strip in Las Vegas. And if that option is open, I will do that, but I don't think that's going to happen.
I just came up with something because I realized if I send him the IPA, I'm going to send him some cantaloupe cream liqueur to try to kill it afterwards.
The miracle cure. Yes.
You mentioned brimstone and other things. Mm-hmm. Mike and I ran into this a couple of years at Distill America, and it was towards, let's say, the last 45 minutes of an event, and we got in a couple hours early before the thing started to run around and taste stuff. So palate was kind of blowing. We had this. My wife found it, and I had some, and I was like, holy shit. It woke my palate up. I was ready to try 3 or 4 things. Like, here, you got to try this. Boom. Ran around, tried 3 or 4 more things. And I was like, let's go try it again. Had it again. Good to go again. I'm like, this is fucked up. It just wipes the palate clean. We brought it on the show. What did we all have with it? But we had.
I was trying it with different things because I thought, let's just see. First of all, it had been about 1.5 years. It's like, okay, does memory serve properly? And it did. I'm like, holy shit. So then I went and I grabbed brimstone. And one of the things I like brimstone, and one of the things I really love is the phenomenon that the next day it's still in your pores, and you could taste it when you breathe or anything like that. You just get that meat out of there. It killed brimstone. It killed Ardbeg Wee Beastie. It killed Malort. And the one, I don't know if you've had Malort or not, but Malort is its own experience. But the owner of that,
I like liquor, so I kind of like it.
Okay, so the owner of Natural Spirits, I saw him at Distill America this last year, and he said, "Okay, you were talking about that Malort thing," and he goes, "I did that." He goes, "Man, you're right. My stuff does actually kill that. Like, it does. It just, there's something about it." And they were at Distill America, and so we saw him early on and said, "Okay, just so you know, I want to come back here after every couple of tries of something else." He goes, "You're on." And so that's what we did. We go try 2 things, come back, take a little sip, reset. And they even at it, which I thought was an odd choice, but at the tasting event, they had hot spicy chicken, which you just think would be an odd choice for distilling. But we went right back to the Natural Spirits booth. Hot spicy chicken was gone. We were back to 0. It's the craziest.
Now I'm curious.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I'll send you a sample. The one questionable one, along with a few decent ones, Dave.
Yeah.
I found for me, the only thing that really cleanses my palate is salt. For the longest time, you'd always hear in a tasting, you'd put something that was peated last, and you'd build up in peat. And because you just can't get peat out of anything, your mouth, a still, a glass, it's impossible. It just stays there. And I was, I don't know, eating like a pretzel or something to try to clear it, and I found salt really worked. And I was like, okay, that can't be random. And it turns out that the salt actually combines with the creosotes and it bonds with them and it pulls them out. So it's actually neutralizing the peat, but it works for other flavors as well. So just getting some like, large granule pretzel salts, just a couple granules on your tongue, roll them around and totally clear.
So I was gonna say, a lot of time pretzels or like just crackers with a little bit of salt is just an easy palate cleanser for a lot of people, and I'm like, that would help explain that a little bit more.
It works.
Very interesting.
It works.
Okay, going back to the question which started about collecting or whatnot. But do you have any spirits that you save specifically for people or events?
Not anymore. Not anymore. I used to, and maybe I'll save a bottle until the next meetup or something like that. But no, nowadays there's nothing that I either haven't opened or wouldn't open if someone came over. And it doesn't have to be someone like my best friend. It can be someone that we're meeting, coming to the house for the first time. I'll open anything. Yeah, it was really honestly only until the 30th birthday, there was 4 bottles that I saved for that. And past that, no, anything's up for grabs. It's just a matter of have I gotten to it yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Preferably it should be shared and drunk.
I agree. I always say it tastes better when you share it.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, here's the last question. Then I'm going to let somebody else ask a question. So you did your inaugural awards, and we've adjusted our categories a couple times. You have a lot of categories, which is not that's not a bad thing. But one, are you going to use the same categories? And do you have any front runners so far?
I'm going to use most of the same categories for now. I might adjust 1 or 2 of them, but no, for the most part, I was pretty happy with them. In full transparency, and I wrote this when I put up the awards, they were inspired by a friend of mine, Jeff Schwartz, Whiskey Fellow.
Oh, yeah, Jeff's awesome.
We like Jeff.
We love
usually.
Jeff.
Yeah. Because I was trying to think of different categories and things. And honestly, I looked at his and I was like, no, these are pretty good. I added a few of my own, adjusted some of them, but full credit goes to him for the inspiration for many, if not most, of my categories. So I would say, front runners this year. I definitely want to add. I want to add a category for best follow-up release. And right now that's going to Ben Holiday, the Weeded Bottled and Bond.
Okay.
It's pretty good.
It blew my mind. Some are kind of just for every year, like best bourbon or anything. I really tried to keep them to whiskeys that people can get and can try. Sometimes the BTECs are just that good. Most of the time they're good, but yeah. This year though, like the Four Roses limited edition from this year, it's a runaway for my bourbon of the year so far. It's like nothing has even come close.
Even on our channel, The Likes Craft, it's not like we completely think that can't happen. BTECs typically are very good. And like you said, like I said, Four Roses, I do have an affinity for. So, I mean, it's not like I don't love them. And like you said, they're a benchmark for a reason. For a lot of things, they're consistently making a lot of really great stuff. But, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Dave. Sorry.
No, now you have me wondering. I'm looking back at the awards. What did I do? I think most of them are the same. Some are going to be tough to repeat. Like I'm just looking at the best non-American rye. I think I've had 1 this year. I happen to have a bunch last year. So it was worth it. So that one might not repeat. Some of the more international ones,
Something like that, we understand. It goes streaky, like you said, where you might have something or 2 or 3 or 4 in a couple months where you have it or someone else does and it pops up. But, often do you get to have something from out of country that's, like you said, not a country rye, is not as accessible as you would think.
Yeah, I'm thinking like some of the more fun ones I think were like the most surprising move. Didn't have to do with the whiskey. It was, and I gave it to Jane Bowie and Denny Potter, both leaving Maker's Mark, with Jackie Zykan leaving Old Forester, and then Lisa Wicker leaving Widow Jane as my other two. Like, that's a fun one to think about, because I just think of who is moving around in the industry, and because we're seeing a generational change where the Russell, if you're at a major distillery, let's say, that's still in the family, like the Russells, the Beams, the Shapiras at Heaven Hill, those families are going to stay where they are, barring some really unforeseen thing. Like, they're going to stay where they are. But at nearly everywhere else, people are staying maybe 5-7 years, enough to put out a product, distill a good quantity, hopefully staying until they have a release or two to stand behind. And I've got real strong feelings on that. But the point is, like, they're moving. And so some of them aren't as surprising anymore, because the only way they're going to advance in their career is to move.
Well, and there's other things too where a couple of them are getting bought out, like at Westland. I know he's moving on, and there's other people in that instances now where the owner distiller is like, okay, now that things have transpired, I'm out. I'm going to go do something different. So I think it's interesting to see where those people are going to be headed to when you're talking about that category. That's a neat category, especially like last year and this year. You've seen a lot of movement.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like right now, I'd have to check when he actually left. I think it was 23, but like Owen Martin leaving Stranahan's, to go.
Yeah, that was just sure.
Take over at Angel's Envy.
Yeah,
like that's probably the most surprising one so far for me this year. Because it was such a category shift and
yeah, I would say especially with I prefer most of the more malts from Stranahan's. That's yeah, I agree with you. That is a very unless you see them head down that path with his movement, but that's a bit of a break from their norm.
Yeah,
good one, nice choice.
So you mentioned Jeff, and I do love Jeff. I think he's fun, but would you ever think about messing with him, like just saying, hey, I'm going to rebrand my stuff as the whiskey guy and just have your logo look kind of similar to his and then just see what happens?
I would consider it just to fuck with him. I would consider it. The biggest reason I wouldn't is because I would start getting death threats from my my best friend who like set up all my SEO and all that stuff. She'd be like, "Don't you fucking touch that? Are you kidding me? You've worked for like 4 years." But no, I would think about it, because biggest thing is he can take the joke.
Exactly. Yes.
He knows he can take the joke.
Yeah.
It's not fun if they can't take the joke.
He'd probably play off of it as well too. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. Yeah, he'd start something called like the Whiskey Square, and
yeah.
It just needs to be whiskey folks with like 2 people on either side of the barrel. Just like their image.
We have 2 guys.
Oh, that's awesome.
2 guys, 1 whiskey. See what happens.
Yeah.
All right. So you said you've done a few barrel picks already. How did you get into doing barrel picks? I was going to say, but from doing reviews, did they allow you access? Did they invite you in? Was it something you requested? So everyone loves to know how you get into that. Everyone knows how they get into that in the industry.
So my entry was a bit unorthodox, and it goes to not just the barrel picks, but I would say if you just want to get into what we all do and reviewing things and tasting and getting to go to events and all of that, just start talking to not only the brands, like if you're talking to a brand, start talking to their distillers and their salespeople. If you're talking to the big guys, talk to their regional reps, talk to the PR firms that are representing most of them. Like Heaven Hill has its own internal PR place, its own department, I should say, not place, but like Beam, Jack Daniels, most of the other ones, Barrel, they all use PR firms now. So you're not getting samples from the distilleries or producers. You're getting them from the PR firms. And reversing that, those people are how you get access. And I don't think that's sharing any, groundbreaking thing that I'm going to lose access for, but that's really just how I start things. Like the other day I came home to a sample of the Russell Single Brick House. And a friend of mine who runs a different podcast, I remember his message in the chat was like, "Excuse me?" Like he's been doing this twice as long as I have, and is younger, which bugs the shit out of me. And he's a big fan of Wild Turkey and Russell's Reserve. Now, I like Wild Turkey and Russell's Reserve. It's not my go-to. I don't know if I have a go-to at this point anymore, but it was never my go-to. I like it. Just never my go-to. And he's like, "How are you getting Campari samples?" I said, "Because I talked to the people who were sending the samples. I got invited to an event, got a contact name, and ran with it." I mean, these people's entire jobs is to give access and give samples and have people try them and get more exposure for their brands. So, play the game on that one. And I know the last episode you guys had when Alan was on, he was going over his list of things you got to do. And it's kind of the same with distributors as it is with PR. Like, you got to play the game to a certain extent. Give them what they want. Give them the exposure. Do a review. Do whatever you'd like. And they will treat you fine. And you can keep your integrity by keeping the reviews honest. Keep them live or, open to interpretation. And that's how you do it. So in terms of the barrel picks, of the 3 that I've done so far, one happened directly because of a PR relationship. That was the Jack Daniels ones. The second one was barrel rye, which is, so the Jack Daniels one is totally sold out. The barrel rye finished in Armagnac casks is on now. And then that was done because I had Barrel on as a guest on the podcast many years ago, and I had been talking to them. I went to the 10th anniversary thing they did right before the KBF with their new facility, and because I had the relationship with the PR firm, when they emailed that they were starting this private release rye series with the 10 different casks you could use for finishing, I wrote back and I said, "Hey, can I get on the list for these?" And they said, "Yeah." And a week later, I had samples of the 3 that I had chosen. They also, I must say, props to Barrel for being the fastest single barrel turnaround I've ever seen. They had it from sample to bottled in under 3 weeks.
Wow. That is impressive.
And then it sat in the distributor for 3 months. But Barrel themselves, they were awesome. And then the third one, which is not out yet, but is coming in Q1 of 2024, is a single barrel with Spirits of French Lick with Alan. And that one, Alan was one of my first guests on the podcast. He was my first return guest. He's someone who I really do look up to in terms of sharing knowledge, also the questions that he asks. I try to ask kind of distiller-ish questions because I want to really get into the nerdiness and into the weeds. So I mentioned to Alan that I was starting to do single barrel picks. It had been a dream of mine for a long time, but I finally was able to do them. And I said, "Send me some weird shit." And you know him,
I know
he's
of
got
at least
some weird
6
shit.
barrels that are weird shit.
Yeah. I don't know if you guys have had the palindrome.
Oh, it's so good.
It's so good. I got to try that right from the barrel last year on a private tour with him and a friend of mine who's also from Indiana. And that I literally was emailing him monthly being like, "Dude, has this come out yet? Because I need some." And it was so good. And so I said, "Send me some weird shit." And he did. And I got a couple of friends together and we picked a toasted oat whiskey.
Nice.
100% oats. He said somewhere between 10 and 20% were hand toasted in a fudge making machine because, Alan. And
It's the fudge packer is broken.
Yeah. So he it was just so good, and it was different. It was 7 years old. It was not a ridiculously high proof. I think I don't have it in front of me. I think it was in like the high 110s. So, drinkable and accessible. And it was just blew us away. We did a King of the Hill style where we had 7 samples and just went through them. And that was, I think, number 3, and nothing kicked it out.
That's nice.
So that's coming up. I'm working on some other stuff as well.
Oh,
Very cool.
I've kind of found they're hidden favorite of mine. Solely, but 100% out. Very interesting. That'll be interesting torque on that. That'll be cool.
And that one, there are only, he did this in 2016, 7-year-old stuff. There are only 9 or 10 barrels of that.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to be the first single barrel to come out with it, which I'm very excited about.
So, oh Jesus, we usually only keep people on about an hour or so. So I don't want to keep you on too late here, David, because we respect everyone's time, and we know it's Monday night, not the weekend, and most people have to get up in the morning. And we're happy that you came on. We're really excited you're part of the Bar Cart Co-op. Are there any other things coming up for you? Any shows coming up that you're excited about in the next month or so that are things coming up on the horizon for you?
Yeah, so there's obviously a new episode comes out every Wednesday. Got some really, I think every guest is great. Except one that was kind of weird. I'll tell you guys offline which one that was.
Okay.
But I really, again, it's all about who I'm most interested in and who piques my interest at a certain time. So like, I'm just looking at my chart. Last week, Ardnamurkin was my guest. This week's going to be Hood River and McCarthy's.
Oh, McCarthy's is a good one. That's really...
Yeah. Last week I flew up to Black Button in Rochester, did an on-site with them, an on-site interview. So that's going to be up next. Like, Laura Fields and Bob McDonald with the Rose and Rye project.
Mm-hmm.
Also got Maggie Kimbrell is going to be on. Spirit of Ven, Swedish whiskey.
That's interesting.
Adnams, they're making an English rye. Also got, some American Boot Hill, Hard Truth, KO Distilling, Highline, Hill Rock. Like, at this point, I just put people on there and I'm like, I'll find the time to put out the episode, because it's just interesting. And if I get too backed up, I'd put out a bonus episode.
I got to try that Boot Hill. There was a guy who he had posted, he went out there and he tried it, and his name's Rick Brenner. And if he saw something that he liked, he would just buy a case of it, because it's like, I'm not going to be without. So he had went out to Boot Hill, and I'm like, seriously, really, Boot Hill? Because come on, it's Kansas. Right. And I'm on the Missouri side, so screw them. But but during the COVID stuff, there was a bunch of people trying to get rid of things that they had in their house, and they posted online, like, local group. And one had this guy had a batch of, it was like 3 bottles or 4 bottles or whatever, and he's just like, this, all 4 of these or whatever it was for $100. One of them was a Peerless Rye, and they're all, all in open stuff. But one of them was batch 1 of Boot Hill weeded. And I'm like, oh, this is interesting. And Rick had that stuff. And I wanted to not like it. And I'll be damned if it isn't pretty damn good. I was very impressed. And then found out that, that guy, he's at Del Bach, the distiller that did that. So, clearly there's a reason that Del Bach brought him on, but this one, it's that Boot Hill's surprisingly really good. That weeded is.
Is that that's Mark, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Had Del Bach on also.
Yeah. So. They're one of those. they fall into that American smoke, kind of that whole mesquite thing that they and Santa Fe Spirits and a couple other people now do. But I like how, even though they're both very close, how Del Box 30% mesquite is different than Santa Fe's. Like they just hit a little. Yeah. They hit much different from each other. I'm like, but I love that it's like a little. For me, it was one of the first times I thought, I'm like, okay, so here's kind of a regional product from that area, because there's not a lot of distilleries in that area, and if they all kind of started going from that edge, it tosses a neat flavor as long as you don't overdo it. Because I have had a couple of them where they did testing above that 30% line, and I'm like, oh fuck that, no. They're like, yeah, we thought so too. Like, no.
Oh yeah, they flat out said we tried the 100%, we tried the 50%, and it was way too much. Yeah, no. So, but no, thank you guys for having me on. A real pleasure to be on here, to join the Bar Cart. I've obviously been friends with Kevin and Alan for several years now. Now get to be friends with you guys too, and it's been an absolute blast. Oh. Happy to talk about more of this stuff anytime.
We'll have you on. We'll see. We'll have you on when we see what you couple of these samples.
Bring it on. I'll try them live.
It's so threateningly.
That's one of the few things that was disturbing, Mitch. That thing was oily and coating, and you couldn't get away from the son of a bitch. So, yes, I'm vaguely. It was not good. Mike can attest to it. Reality, like it turned rancid. Something was not right. As he just sits there quiet, he's like, I don't want to speak it up or down. I just want to let it go. So
he's afraid that sample's going to get diverted to his house.
No.
Oh, I've had it. and again, it was an experience, and not unlike. Have you had the Amador hop whiskey?
That's not bad though. I like
that. That one was a really fun one with IPA. The way that they did it.
Hey, look, I love. This is gonna be weird, but like I love the Jameson Caskmates IPA. I love that mix.
It's not bad.
I like the stout, but I prefer the stout but it's just, I'm not a big IPA person either. So
I like it. I'm not a big stout person. So it goes both ways on that.
Yeah. Anything you get past a normal Jameson is good. You just get past that first step.
Yeah.
And they seem to kick it up quite a notch.
Yeah. Well, the Jameson orange, just get a fucking orange. Like, no one's drinking that straight. You're making a cocktail. Just get a fucking orange.
That's 100% accurate. So, but thanks for coming on again, David. We really appreciate it. We look forward to spending some more time with you in the future. And make sure you check out his channel because everything does come out on Wednesdays, just like Kevin's channel as well too. Wednesday's a big day in the whiskey world.
I found that out afterwards and thought about changing. I was like,
no, you stick to it. Just stick to it. It gives something else. It gives everything. It's a big day for people. It gives you a lot to look at all in that one thing. So no, stick with that. It's a good thing. Yeah. All right. So remember, it's not the size of den that matters. It's the love of whiskey. Cheers, everyone.
Cheers.
Cheers.
What?